just like I did in the first section, here I use an H2, I'll use another header 2 with chocolate chip cookie recipe. I want to make sure to include that on this homepage. And within the chocolate chip cookie recipe, I also have 2 additional headers, but they're one level down from the recipe. Here I have the ingredients, and then I also have the baking instructions. I'll press Ctrl S to save the file, and over on the right-hand side, let's press the F5 key to see how it looks. Look at that. Now we just need to fill in the ingredients. Now that I have these additional headers on my page, I now want to fill in the ingredients. You can get the ingredient list from the kevinccookiecompany.com website under recipes. Over on the left-hand side, I'll insert a new line, and here I'll paste in all of the ingredients required for our delicious chocolate chip cookies. Now, the order of the ingredients doesn't so much matter. Here, I'll save the file and let's refresh. And right now, it's just one long list of all these ingredients, but I would like to show them in a bulleted list. So to include a bulleted or unordered list, we're going to use another element. Here, I'm going to open it and we're going to enter UL, and this stands for unordered list. Now, just like we've been doing all along, we also need to close it out. Here at the very bottom, I'll enter in the closing tag and type in UL, and that closes it out. But I also need to specify or let the browser know where each list item is, or an LI. So here we're going to nest another element within the unordered list. Here I'll open and close. We'll enter LI for list item. And here at the very end, I'll close it out. And there, that should also close the list item. I'll go through and do that for the rest of the items here. I've now added all of my different list items, and I also indented all the different items so I know that these are all part of this list. Again, it just makes your code a little bit more readable. I'll now save the file, and over on the right-hand side, let's press F5, and here I can now see an unordered list of all the different ingredients required to make our cookies. Down below, I also want to include a list for all of the different baking instructions. I copied a list of all of the baking instructions from the kevinccookiecompany.com website. And back over on the left-hand side, I'll insert a new line. I could insert a whole bunch of new lines, and I'll paste in all of the baking instructions. Now, I want this to be a list as well, but the order of all of these steps very much matters, unlike with the ingredients. So instead of using an unordered list, we want to use an ordered list. And you guessed it, the element name for an ordered list is OL. At the very top, I'll make sure to open it, and at the very bottom, I'll close it out. And here too, just like we did with this unordered list, we need to add list items for every single step in the instructions. So here, let's open it up. I'll add a list item, and at the very end, I'll also close it out. And here too, I'll go through and do it for every single item and also apply indentation. And look at that, we now have an ordered list for all of the baking instructions. I'll press Ctrl S to save the file, and over on the right-hand side, let's press F5 to refresh. And look at that, we now have an ordered list. So what's the difference between an ordered list and an unordered list? Well, here you'll notice that we just have bullets for each one of these items, and down below we have a numbered list. So again, this implies that the order matters. Remember, when we enter these different elements into the HTML, we're trying to make the right choice to convey the right meaning for the content that's contained within. Over on the right-hand side, in number 4 and number 5, I have 2 sentences in each of these. But just to make sure it really stands out, I want to place each of these sentences onto a separate line. Here I'll zoom out just a little bit, and here I see where that second sentence starts. Here's mix on low speed, here's mix on low speed. And then I also say stir, and here's stir. So to insert another line, if I just press enter on my keyboard, that won't make any difference to what's shown within my browser. So we need to tell the browser that I want a new line there. And there's an element that we can use called the break. I'll enter in a BR. That'll tell the browser that it should insert a new line. And here too, I'll also insert a break. Now, with the break element, you don't have to close it. That's because all you need to say is break, and the browser knows exactly what it needs to do. You don't need to wrap it around the sentence. Let's now press save, and over on the right-hand side, let's refresh. And here I see that second sentence is on another line, and here that second sentence is also on another line. I think that makes it a little bit more readable. The page is coming together very nicely, but over on the left-hand side, I want to make sure that if any web developer comes in to this page in the future, that they understand that this isn't just any ordinary chocolate chip cookie recipe. This is our best-selling cookie recipe. So I want to add what's called a comment, just to add a little bit of extra clarity to this HTML page. Right underneath this header, I'll type in a comment that says, this is the Kelvin Cookie Company best-selling recipe. I used a less than sign, an exclamation mark, and 2 hyphens, and then 2 hyphens at the end and the greater than symbol to let the browser know that this is a comment and it shouldn't display it to a visitor coming to this page. I'll save the page, and over on the right-hand side, let's press F5. And you'll notice that that comment doesn't show up at all. It's only embedded into this HTML file, so only if you come in to edit the file can you actually see it. Now, one fun little trick over here on the HTML page in my browser, you can right-click, and there's the option at the very bottom to view the page source. You could also press Control together with U. And when you view the page source, here you can see all of the different HTML that makes up this page. And look at that. Here's that comment highlighted in green. So it's not visible on the page, but it's very much contained within the HTML file. I'll close out of the source. All in all, this page looks pretty solid, but on second thought, I don't know if it makes sense to include the chocolate chip cookie recipe directly on the home page or the index page. It probably makes sense to have a separate page that we link to from this home page. Over on the left-hand side, let's select this entire section with the chocolate chip cookie recipe. I'll highlight all of that and then press Ctrl X on my keyboard. That cuts all of that content and places it onto my clipboard. Next, let's open up File Explorer again. Back within File Explorer, I want to create another page that contains the recipe. I'll right-click with my mouse and let's go down to New. And here, let's select Text Document, just like we did with the index page. Here, I'll highlight all of this text and let's type in recipe.html and then hit Enter. Here we get that warning again. Let's click on Yes. And look at that, we now have a recipe page. Just like we did before with the index page, let's now drag and drop this file into Notepad. Now we have the index file opened up side by side with the recipe. Let's now arrange Notepad so it's side by side with the web browser window. Here I now have my recipe.html file, and I'll paste in all of the content that contains the chocolate chip cookie recipe. I'll save this file, and I'll also save the index file. And over here, let's refresh the index page. But one problem is, how do I get from this index page to my recipe page? Well, to do that, we can use what's called a link. To insert a link, over on the left-hand side on my index page, I'll insert a new line and type in some text that says, learn how to make our chocolate chip cookies. If I save it and refresh, we see that line of text, but it's not yet a link. There's an element that we can use to turn this into a link, and it's called the anchor element. Here, I'll open it, and let's type in an A for anchor. And I'll copy this tag, paste it at the end, and let's close it out. But still, that doesn't yet tell the browser where to send the person. So we need to insert what's called an attribute. It basically tells the anchor where to send someone. And we're going to use an attribute called href, or what stands for hypertext reference. Basically tells the browser where we should send someone. And I want the person to go to recipe.html. Here, I'll type in recipe.html, and then I'll save it. Now over on the right-hand side, let's refresh, and look at that. And there we have that link underlined. And you see that my cursor changes when I hover over it. When I click on it, look at that. That brings us directly to our recipe page. Now to go back, I could also click on this back button, or we could also include a back link directly on the recipe page. Let's do that. Right up on top, let's click into recipe. Back on the recipe page, at the very top, I'll insert a new line and let me paste in a link. Here, I'm using that anchor element again, and we're referring to the index.html page. And here, I'm referring to it as home. I'll save this page, let's refresh it over on the right, and now I have a link that goes back home. So I could click on home, I'm back on the home, and I could click back and forth between my different pages. This way you can help people navigate throughout your website. The website really has some fantastic and valuable content, but what would bring it to that next level is if we included some imagery. Up on top, I have another tab open for the